Well, g'day everybody, it's Jeff Adam here and welcome to our South Australia virtual vacation. We're so excited to show you the wildlife, the wilderness and the wine of this incredible destination, the Wonder Down Under of South Australia. I want to thank my travel advisor mates for making sure that they've looked after you and invited you along on this journey. They've actually got some special treats for you. They've got an Australia travel planner they want to share with you. So if you're planning a trip to Australia, New Zealand, this planner will be very much worthwhile. They can email a link so you can open this one up electronically. They've also put in there a map of Australia, so you can actually open it up, and nothing like a map to kind of plot out your vacation. And then they've got a little dictionary in there. Now that's there is to help you understand me, I suppose. I've been over here for 20 years. I've been to a speech therapist, but I still run into trouble. I get excited when I talk about Australia. I get very excited when I talk about my home state, South Australia. So by all means, if you're keen to pick up any of these pieces, if you'd like to get a map and a dictionary and a travel planner, please ask your travel advisor and they will send them through. They'll organise them. I've organised a special link for them to order them and they can order them for you. The travel advisors are a very important part of the process for us because they really have helped put this presentation together. And here's some good reasons why I recommend you should use a travel advisor. I mean, peace of mind, number one, and great customer service. They maximise your budget and they give you a better choice of actual things you can see and do and places to stay. They save you time, therefore, and they give great personal service, giving you insights and expertise that puts you ahead. The document assistance is important because you need good documents when you're travelling to make sure you've got everything in place. And then they are your consumer advocate. They basically look after you should anything go awry. They're there to step in and look after you. And they can do so because they've got great industry contacts. They're good mates. And a mate is a person who makes Australia travel easy. So I highly recommend that you work with your travel advisor. Now I'm going to give you an insight into how to speak Aussie. Are you ready? How do you speak Aussie? Well, that little pendant you see there, that lovely pendant, is actually an opal necklace. Isn't that gorgeous? Now, if you were purchasing this opal, this is one of the few things in Australia where you might be able to barter. Typically in Australia, the price is the price. But when it comes to opals, you can actually, if you go about it the right way, you can actually get the price at the right point you like. So let's run through what you might be saying if you were going in to purchase this at an opal store. First thing you do is you say g'day, and of course you know what g'day, and that means hello. Next you'll say, you're pointing at this opal pendant, and you're going Emma Chiswick. Emma Chiswick means how much is it? Australian slang, isn't it interesting? And then when they tell you the price, you go crikey. Now crikey is like an expression of surprise because you're like, wow, that's a bit much. And then you're thinking, well, okay, is that your best price? So that's where you'll say, are you fair dinkum? Fair dinkum means, is that your best price? So there you go. You're starting to barter now. You're starting to negotiate. So the guy goes away. He kind of pretends he's playing around with his little, calculator like to do. He comes back and he gives you a price. You look at that price and you go, you ripper. What's ripper mean? That means that's fantastic. So you're excited now. You put your hand in your skyrocket. What's your skyrocket? Rhyming slang, skyrocket pocket. So you put your hand in your pocket and you get out your credit card. You use your credit card to go and purchase it. Credit cards are used everywhere in Australia, and South Australia especially. You'll find you'll have no troubles. Visas and MasterCards are by far the best, better than American Express, but I'll leave it at that. So you've purchased it now. You walk out the store and you're elated, you're excited, and you'll shout out, bloody beauty. And what are you saying then? You're saying very good, you're excited. So yes, you've made a purchase, congratulations. Now South Australia, they refer to it as the wow state. And the wow of South Australia is in its wildlife, in its outback, and its wine. I mean, South Australia is an interesting state. We call it, it's like an artisan Australia. It's for curious-minded travellers, people who are drawn to a state that offers, when you think about South Australia, we are the only free settled state. Yeah, all the other states are a bunch of convicts. That's right. We were free settlers, I'll have you know. We chose to live in South Australia. We chose to come here to build a better life. And you find that South Australians are very invested. They're invested in what they do, and you'll see that. You'll find that, you'll see that right throughout this presentation. You'll hear of people that are going to look after you. People are going to great food, great wine, great wildlife, great outback experiences. South Australians really do lay it all out there, and South Australia itself is population 1.3 million in Adelaide and 1.5 million in all of South Australia. So it really isn't a very populated state as such. I mean, the city itself is only 1.3 million, and it's quite spread out quite neatly. And when eventually this coronavirus dissipates, South Australia is going to be a great destination. And today's presentation is designed to give you an insight into seeing how South Australia is a destination in its own right. I mean, you're flying into Adelaide, and within range of this capital city, Adelaide, you've got a lot of things right on your doorstep. Within 20 minutes, you've got beaches and you've got the Adelaide Hills. An hour's drive and you're up in the Barossa Valley. Going south for 2.5 hours, you've not only taken a drive down the Fleurieu Peninsula, but you've also boarded a ferry that's taking you across to Kangaroo Island. Now, you can do that in 30 minutes as well and be on KI. You can do 40 minutes and be on Eyre Peninsula over at Port Lincoln, enjoying all sorts of aquatic activities and some wonderful coastline and wildlife experiences too. And then going north of there, 5-hour drive will put you in Flinders Ranges, into the outback of South Australia. But let's start with Adelaide. Adelaide itself was designed by Colonel Light. Colonel Light actually planned this city, planned this wonderful livable space. It's completely surrounded by parkland, and they've utilised that parkland for all sorts of sporting events, for all sorts of activities, festivals and so on. In fact, from here, you're looking down upon this river. You can see meandering through. That's the Torrens, and that Torrens goes all the way to the ocean. You can actually hop on a bike and do a Adelaide City to Sea bike tour. In fact, there's a company called Pure SA that within the 20 minutes of the city will put you on all sorts of adventurous activities. You can go hiking up through Morialta Wilderness area and do a little wildlife hike. You'll see birds like you'll see the blue wren you see here, that lovely colourful male. The females are plain, the males are quite colourful as you see. And then the blue-winged kookaburra laughing away, and lots of marsupials hopping about too. Now, back into the centre of the city, of course, you've got this beautiful Adelaide Oval. It sits on a piece of that parkland, and right behind it, you can see the rooftop of the festival building, the festival centre. Now, the Adelaide Oval it's quite a historic oval. Historic, it's actually the Adelaide cricket ground, and in summer, yes, you can go and check out Aussies playing cricket, taking on the Poms, taking on England, or because we call Poms, or taking on New Zealand. Yes, it's a great summer sport. And if you want to mix and meld in with Aussies, this is a great place to start. Or if you're there in fall and spring and winter, you can actually go and watch the Aussie Rules. Yes, the Aussie Rules, the winter game, and this is where the big men fly. And you're looking here, the man with the ball, he's from Port Adelaide. That's the team you're all barracking for now. I all make you official sport followers of Port Adelaide. The Power, they call them. And they're playing against the Crows, the Adelaide Crows, which is the other South Australian team. You can't hear I'm parochial, can you? No, I love them both. Now here, also a little, for those that want a bit of exercise and do something a little adventurous, you can actually put these harnesses on and you can do a climb up over the Adelaide Oval. It's a wonderful rooftop experience. It's a fun thing to do if you're going there for a game of sport in the middle of the day. As long as you haven't been drinking any alcohol, you're allowed to go and do a little climb of the Adelaide Oval. It's quite a great experience. It gives you great vistas, not only over the Oval itself, but over the surrounding Adelaide. Now, the Adelaide Festival Centre, pride of place, on the other side of the Torrens there, up against the city itself as its backdrop. The festival centre is really a hype. We're very big on our festivals and our events. We have lots of events right throughout. We have the Adelaide Fringe Festival. In fact, they say from February to March, Adelaide's putting on a show, and we're doing all sorts of fun things. The Fringe Festival, of course, is huge. So is the Adelaide Festival of the Arts. Lots of indoor, outdoor activities, as well as Wome Adelaide, which is a wonderful festival of song, of women singing. It's just fabulous. And the city itself will celebrate all sorts of multicultural, because as a city, as free settlers, we've got the Greeks, Italians, we've got wonderful German settlements, we've got wonderful Indigenous. So we celebrate Asia, Indo-Fest, the Spiritual Fest for our Indigenous Aboriginal people. There's lots of events. We love to celebrate life. Now, if you are staying in Adelaide, a couple of properties I'd like to mention are the Majestic Roof Garden, which is a 4-star property, very close to one end of Rundle Street. And there's also the Mayfair Hotel. Mayfair's actually built into a lovely old reclaimed Colonial Mutual building, and it's a delightful 5-star hotel on the corner of Hindley Street and King William Street, right opposite the Adelaide Mall. Now, the Adelaide Mall is very central. Any South Australian will tell you, meet you in the mall, see you at the Silver Balls in the mall. Adelaide Mall area is a great area for shopping, and there's wonderful little arcades and coffee houses and tea houses, so you can kind of meander through here. There's some great little tours that you can actually do. We can organise like little food tours to take in some of the markets. In fact, you can do a market tour to the Adelaide Central Market. Now, I love going to a good market. I mean, the smell of sweet, sticky tropical fruits, and the heady smells of fish and poultry, and the lovely smell of smoked meats, the German sausage, and the good din of a good. I mean, food is the essence of life, and that whole arrangement is a place to meet and to kind of wander and chat and celebrate life itself. And no better person to do that with is to go out with Mark here. Mark Gleason does a fabulous job of taking us on a guided vacation through this market. He actually knows a lot of the people there, introduced you. You're tasting foods along the way. You'll sit down after and have a little coffee, a little latte, and I love watching Aussies. I love watching people engage. Now, right outside of the Adelaide markets, there's a little trolley car, a little tram that takes you down to the Glenelg. And this here is painted up. It's actually painted up where they call this the emu dreaming. It's very much the indigenous art. It's recognised for celebrating the diversity of Aboriginal cultures in South Australia. There's more Aboriginal languages spoken in Australia than there's language spoken in all of Europe. So, yeah, and South Australia, the Aboriginal culture of South Australia is held and revered, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But that tram will take you down to the Glenelg, and when you get down to Glenelg, you're right on the beachfront, this beautiful white sand beach. You can board a little cruise vessel, a little sailing vessel, and head out with temptation and do a little snorkeling with local dolphins, or you might go and buy some fish and chips and feed the seagulls and just take in. This is a very popular Aussie thing to do. Now, food-wise in South Australia, Adelaide's got more restaurants per head of capital than any other city in Australia. So you've got restaurants like the Orana by Chef Jock Zonfrillo, who's actually the name suggests Italian. He's actually from Scotland. He's got Italian heritage in there, and he's also invested a lot of time in understanding Indigenous culture and the actual traditional cultural and traditional food. And he's basically put a lot of that food into his menus. Fabulous. Then there's Africola, a rite of colour, taste, sound and smell on East Terrace. This is South Africa comes to South Australia. You can get a feel. For restaurants to survive in Adelaide, they've got to be bloody good. And these guys are. In particular, Golden Boy. Golden Boy is this uber cool Asian, right in the East End, which is also an old market area. It's been reclaimed, and there's a fabulous movement of food and wine and restaurants and bars. In fact, this one backs up against the Botanic Bar in East End, and you'll find that the food here is very much a Thai cuisine. It's just authentic Thai at its very, very best. And then you've got lots of little pokey little bars, these little small little places that only can probably have a maximum of 20, 30 people inside. This is where you'll find great gym and run and whiskey, some fine cigars. You might head down to Lee Street. I used to work in Lee Street. This was wasn't there when I was there, but the Pink Moon Saloon, it's the Wild Blue Yundi, this wilderness-inspired treat lies between the Blue Door and this pint-sized intervention. Once you get inside there, great cocktails, great food, great nibbles. Then you've got the Clever Little Tailor in Peel Street. Again, it's all about exposed brick, exposed stone, timber. I love the place to come in here and have a great cocktail and have a good chat. You really are somewhere that's really happening. Speaking of really happening, North Terrace, our cultural boulevard. Wandering along North Terrace, the art gallery of South Australia. What I love about art galleries, you wander through an art gallery and it gives you a window into the culture, to the local people, to wander through and check out from early colonial art. You'll get examples of what it was like to live when you first arrived and when they first settled. You get great Aboriginal art as well, and you get some wonderful more contemporary styles. So you get a real finger on the pulse of the people itself. And to get a finger on the pulse of the Indigenous Aboriginal people, you'll go to the South Australian Museum. The collective of Aboriginal of art, this wonderful cultures gallery, is phenomenal. Something like 65,000 years of Australia's Aboriginal people have successfully innovated and developed creative ways to kind of basically to exist in the harshest of continents in the world. And it's a wealth of information. And you wander through here, you'll kind of see all sorts of paintings and shields and maps and early recordings and photographs. And to go with a guide, like a guide on a Adelaide cultural safari, to learn about the significance of the shields, for example. They were used for protection and also for power. And it's just fascinating to explore the story behind the shields themselves, and absorbing the shock of conflict, but also they're quite symbolic as well. So it's really quite and then the boomerang. To understand the boomerang, I mean, yes, internationally they're recognised as a symbol of Australia. Aboriginal people, the boomerang is a symbol of cultural endurance, a tangible link to a long presence on this continent. And look at the dot painting, look at the work in that art. It is just phenomenal. You could spend hours in there, and I can tell you, not everything's on display. It's every time I come back to Adelaide, I love to wander through and check out the Aboriginal Cultures Gallery, and then go out on a culture safari and be with a local Indigenous Aboriginal guide. Learn to throw the boomerang, hear the local stories. Have the whole the introduction to country, and go into, like, for example, wandering through the Botanic Gardens. I mean, an amazing array of plants that are in the Botanic Gardens. Basically, this was built right at the time the state was settled, and so you've got some wonderful plants, and you'll get a chance to learn a bit about the Indigenous foods as well. And right on the very corner of the Botanic Gardens, the southeast corner, you've got the National Wine Centre. And it is this is Australia's National Wine Centre, because South Australia produces 60% of all the wine that goes overseas, comes over to the North American market. And 80% of all the premium wine, in other words, the very best wine, is coming from SA. And one of the best wines is the wine that comes from Penfolds Magill Estate. In fact, this wine was the wine that put South Australia on the map, and to come in here and savour, perhaps do a little Grange Hermitage tasting. It's like drinking liquid velvet. It honestly rates in the high 90s to 100 in all the ratings as being one of the best red wines in the world. And to come up here and have a tasting of Grange Hermitage and enjoy the fabulous views from this lofty restaurant overlooking the Adelaide, the lights twinkle at night as well. It's such a pretty spot. Another pretty spot for some of that is Mount Lofty. And the Mount Lofty house up in the Adelaide Hills has got views out over the back across the Piccadilly Valley. In fact, staying up here, this lovely old bluestone, you've got sensational restaurants and dining. In fact, this is where I was supposed to be with my mum for her 80th birthday this year. We're going to Hardy's Veranda Restaurant and taking in the incredible views. And they've got new property. They've actually built this sequoia at Mount Lofty House, which sits just slightly below the lovely bluestone Mount Lofty House itself, but still offering commanding views. The interior, they're just divine. So a great spot to base yourself. You'll have magpies warbling. The magpie is the state symbol of South Australia. And I've got to tell you, speaking of South Australian state symbols, my mother sitting on the ground here, that's her there, that's her 70th birthday. So we missed her 80th. This was her 70th. We're actually in a park in Adelaide. It's actually Burnside Park. And that big eucalyptus tree was our backdrop. So we got the family all set up, the lovely grandkids are down the bottom. We took that photograph. No sooner did we take the photograph than this little guy was Mum's birthday surprise. He kind of climbed down that tree, walked up to the little grandkids, I got photographs, and then off he went and climbed another tree. To see koalas in the wild happens here in Adelaide. In fact, in Adelaide, you can cuddle a koala. In 20 minutes, you can be up in the Cleland Wildlife Park, and you can have that big giggle on a big smile on your face and be cuddling a koala. That's me and Mum there in the little picture. But yeah, there's only 2 states you can do that, and South Australia happens to be one of them. And yes, at the Cleland Wildlife Park, you'll take the hand of a kangaroo and be drawn through some amazing wildlife interactions. You'll see Tasmanian devils. You'll see little dingoes, little puppy dingoes. I mean, you get all sorts of wildlife are found here. And depending on the time of year, You can have some wonderful interactions. Now, a person that can line up some of that is Marianne. She's a sweetheart, and Marianne has taken people on tours through the Adelaide Hills to Cleveland Wildlife Park up to Harndorf. Harndorf itself is a German town, because I mentioned that a lot of the people that came to settle here were escaping religious persecution. They were coming somewhere where they could freely practice, because South Australia promoted basically a togetherness. Everybody could come here and be a part of one country, one culture, at the same time still sharing their former culture. So you'll find here in Harndorf, you'll find the pubs here, like the German heritage, this beautiful German Arms Hotel. You'll belly up to the bar and savour some good German beers and sit down to a beautiful ploughman's lunch. It's a traditional German lunch, lots of meat and more meat. Or maybe you want something more elegant. You want something more lengthy. You want perhaps having a nice lunch that kind of lays out for a couple of hours, and it's just like, say, 6 or 7 courses and a wine paired to each course, and you've got this beautiful valley it's just gorgeous. I mean, this whole area was the reason why Hans Huyssen, one of the early explorers that came through, or one of the early settlers rather, came to Adelaide. And Hans Huyssen was an artist of great repute. In fact, his work hangs in major galleries around the world. And here, Hans Huyssen called Adelaide Hills home, because he just loved the light and the trees and the countryside. Just slightly north of there, you've got the Barossa Valley. Now, the Barossa Valley would be deemed South Australia's wine capital, Australia's wine capital. The Barossa Valley is where all the major wineries are. And you'll find, coming here to the Barossa Valley, which is where I used to live, I'd always recommend you drop into Little Lindock and go to the bakery and make yourself up a little picnic basket. So you drop into the bakery and you get in there in the morning, because all the bread's like crusty and fresh, and you'll get some Binnenstick, which is it's actually a cake base with custard and sliced almonds baked on top with honey. It just makes my mouth water. You'll drop next door, you'll get your bread and that, you'll drop next door to the butcher into Steiny's, and you'll get some German Metwurst. I mean, Steiny puts garlic and he spices and he smokes this Metwurst, and it's just fabulous. You need some crackers. You might drop into like Lagana's next door to that and pick up some crackers, and then you go up to Kellermeister or the Alta Weinhaus, and you'll drop up here, and you'll just walk in and you'll order this wine. Don't even ask questions. Just say, I want a bottle of that Wild Witch, that Shiraz. It's bloody good, Kellermeister. The winemaker will go, wow, these people seem to know what they're doing, and they've brought all their nibbles as well. Before you know it, the winemaker will come across, he'll sit down with you, have a good old chat. If it's winter, the fire's going, you've got a nice big glass of red, you're enjoying some nibbles. It's fun. I mean, people in the Barossa are very interactive and easygoing. Drop into Robert O'Callaghan's Rockford wines and Salah de Rocky. I mean, he's made a good Jimmy Watson Cabernet Sauvignon. Jimmy Watson's a trophy, so he's a good winemaker. There's also Jacobs Creek as a very high standard set here at Jacobs Creek, and they've got a wonderful tasting area to give great insights into the Barossa, as do St. Hallett wines. So you've got some great wine tasting opportunities, chance to meet and mingle with winemakers. You can also do a little cycling to kind of keep yourself active and take in the surrounds, and maybe drop into some old museums. This is Chateau Yaldara, which I used to work here myself. I used to do the pays for Mr. Herman Tum, and he has 2 sons, Robert and Dieter, back in the day. It's now this fabulous museum you can wander through. Or you might want to drop into Penny's up here. Penfolds have got an operation up in near New Yupta, and you'll get a chance to blend your own wine. Yes, you get a chance to make your own wine. And Small Batch Wine Tours is a great little company that will kind of piece a lot of this activity together. They'll take you on a small tour that will get you in to meet people like Maggie Beer, who's famous for her fabulous foods and her jellies, and she's such a great cook, and you'll get a feel for that. It's all about farm to plate up here, all about farm to plate. She's got a place called the Pheasant Farm, which is a good spot to drop in for a bite to eat. Another good spot to drop in is Seppelsfield. Now, when they built Seppelsfield, this actually is purely gravity fed. So when the wine is actually crushed on the top of a hill, the grape juice goes down to the holding tanks where it ferments. It's then released from the holding tanks down further. So where it's blended, and it's just amazing. The whole process is set up by gravity, and you get a chance to savour some of that product. They have a vintage tawny port where you can come here and you could taste your birth year. Yeah, I can tell you, 1962 is a good year. I've been fortunate enough to be here myself and savour it. It's amazing, yeah. So you get a chance to savour it on the tour. You get a chance to savour your birth year. And part of the product is now this lovely jam factory studios where all these artists have come together, and it's making leather goods, and it's all about the whole everything's I mentioned farm to plate, but it's also very creative. People out here are very much into what they do. They're invested. They're artisans. And one place of reputed artisans is the Louise, an Appalachian restaurant. Their artists are in the actual product itself. The Appalachian restaurant is by far one of the best restaurants in the Barossa. And this is a 5-star luxury lodge surrounded by vineyards. The chef will take you out into the garden. You'll be able to pick vegetables and herbs from the Appalachian's garden. And you can also drop into the farmer's market as well. Nothing like getting up early in the morning, grabbing a cup of coffee, wandering through the market, having a chat to locals. If you're there in September, you'll be there for the Barossa Valley Gourmet Weekend, and this is a lot of fun. Aussies are at their best when they're showing off, when they're putting out their best wine, their best food, and they just want to make sure they're giving you the best time. And you'll feel that. You'll feel that with South Australians. And as soon as they hear that funny accent, that Canadian or US accent, before you know it, you'll make some fast friends. Heading south of Adelaide, 20 minutes is McLaren Vale. Now, McLaren Vale, I used to live down here as well, worked in the hospitality industry here. A place was called the McLaren's on the Lake when I was there. It's now called Sanafino McLaren Vale. But I was the MC here for weddings. I ran functions and looked after. I got to marry quite a few people, actually, in this area, I believe. And it's here, places like a little winery called Wirra Wirra. Greg Trott. It used to be a tin shed when I was there over 30 years ago now. And Greggy Trott's, he's since passed, but his legacy is living before him. That church block was a wine that basically really put him to the front of the pack, and was a marvellous man. He's quite the visionary in building this winery up. He's got this lovely little toy he wanted to build. It's called the Trebuchet, and it's basically so they shoot watermelons off. They kind of drop that weight, the centrifugal force pulls it around and flicks the water around through the air. So yeah, it's a bit of a toy out there in the vineyards. Having a few glasses of vino, it's always a lot of fun. Speaking of fun, Darry's or Darrenberg Cube is quite interesting. Now, Chester, the winemaker at Darrenberg, is seemingly the eccentric, always wearing really, really bright clothing. And he built this cube in the shape of like a Rubik's Cube, as you can see. Now, his purpose was wanting to demystify wine. He wanted to create a place where people could come and not be drawn to the pretentious nature of wine, but he wanted to explain it, make it an everyman's experience. And so coming here, this is actually a restaurant. It's a tasting area. It kind of goes into the history of wine. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. Quite a quirky experience and something that people will talk about for a long time after visiting. Now, just a short journey further, you can actually follow through to the Fleurieu Peninsula, heading down to Cape Jarvis and hopping on a ferry. Takes about 2.5 hours in total, and you're on Kangaroo Island, or you can fly across to KI. Now, Kangaroo Island, they say, separated from mainland Australia over 10,000 years ago, and the Aboriginal people pretty much left straight after. So the wildlife over here seems to run its own roost, and the Kangaroo Island kangaroos, they've got a little darker face, and they really don't have the same concern about human beings. In fact, I had this kangaroo when I was working for Tourism South Australia jump in my car. Now, the only way to get a kangaroo out of your car is to open up the other door and make him hop all the way through. Yeah, precocious little critters. And that's why the kangaroo and the emu are on our flag, on our crest, because Australia is always progressing. The kangaroo and the emu are always going forward. So it's here you get a chance to see that wildlife experience. You got to kind of meet up with a mob of kangaroos, going out with a local guide like Craig here, KI, exceptional KI, does a fabulous job. And what I like about going out with small operators like Craig is that he really involves the local community. I mean, he's very much a part. He's a KI boy through and through. I mean, when I was 25, Craig was about 19, 20, and he was actually working for the national parks then. He'd come in to the SA Tourism, and I was kind of promoting South Australia. He's been doing it since then, and he'll take you around to a little Ligurian honey shop where the Ligurian bee is only found now in Kangaroo Island. Makes this beautiful honey. He'll take you savouring wine. You'll drop around to the Islander and save a good wine product, and he'll also incorporate visits to KI Spirits or KISS. Keeping it simple, they make some sensational gins. And at the same time, too, he'll make sure you get that whole wildlife wilderness experience. He'll get you out to see the Tamar wallabies around Emu Bay. And then around Cygnet River, you'll see these black swans and their baby cygnets, or the glossy, rare black cockatoo. There's also, looking up in the trees, you'll spot koalas. And while you're enjoying this wonderful setting, he'll stop for a little barbecue. And amongst these river red gums, he'll put out the barbie and he'll cook up some King George whiting, which are caught fresh locally. He'll pour a nice Riesling across that wine, a locally made Kangaroo Island Riesling, and he'll cook up a nice little barbecue. Something about being out in the bush, the smell of the bush, the smell of a good barbecue, all of a sudden you're hearing these sounds. And Craig says, hey, check this out. And before you know it, you've spotted an echidna. Now, these echidna have been going around for 23 to 65 million years, they reckon. It's actually a monotreme. There's only two monotremes. A monotreme is an egg-laying marsupial, you might say. It's an egg-laying animal. So it's like a dinosaur. And this little guy, when he wants to escape, he's got rear-wheel and front-wheel drive, and he just digs a hole straight down to the ground. Quite amazing. You can follow Craig out to Seal Bay and along this beautiful white sand beach under the guidance of a local ranger. You'll get a chance to see Australian sea lions. A colony of about 400 sea lions are found here. Now, if you really like the sea lions, because they are kind of fun, and you want to head across to Eyre Peninsula, I've got a spot for you where you get a chance to swim with sea lions, and they're a lot of fun. Across to Port Lincoln. Now, it's about a 40-minute flight to Port Lincoln, and Port Lincoln itself is an extraordinary city. You've got beautiful Boston Bay that it sits on, and it's like the city's heritage and history. It revolves around the ocean, and it's really a place where, well, you could call it Australia's seafood capital. In fact, coming here and being you can do a little tour, the best of Port Lincoln and Coffin Bay, which will give you a fabulous opportunity to dine, like at the local marina here, the Marina Hotel. Maybe have some locally cooked oysters. These oysters are all farm Coffin Bay oysters, and you'll just see the ones I want to point out to you, though. The ones that I wish they made them over here. These three here. See those three? That's little bits of bacon. And you put them on top, then you put Worcestershire sauce, and you stick it under a bain marie, and you cook them up. Oh my goodness, I'm salivating just thinking about squeezed lemon on top of that. Oh my goodness me! Yeah, there's some great oysters there, and you can savour. Truly, some of the best seafood is found here. An incredible spread of fish and shellfish. I mean, in fact, the actual Coffin Bay oysters have become so popular that we do a little tour out to the Coffin Bay Oyster Farm. And David Dowell basically takes out groups. He runs a wonderful operation, and he'll take out groups and you'll get a chance to savour the oysters. Nothing like standing out here, the glass of wine in one hand, an oyster in the other, freshly squeezed lemon, savouring oysters, wonderful. Or you might want to, his company also can take you fishing, so you can go out and try and catch your own seafood too. So let me tell you, this coastline is abundant with some great fish species. Of course, it's catch and release, unless, of course, we're going to cook it, and then that's fine. But otherwise, they release. And you're not into the fishing, but you want to get out and experience the underwater world. Well, why don't you go out and swim with the sea lions? These sea lions in Bear Bay, they'll come right up and press their nose up against your goggles, and you'll get all sorts. They're just so cute. They're like puppies of the sea. And so too can dolphins be, just the same. They've got friendly dolphins that hang around and want to say hello. And for those who want to go out into deeper water and want to try something a little different, want to perhaps go swim with a great white shark, we can safely do that inside a cage. You get a chance to see these great white sharks. They swim like the size of a school bus, some of these things. Now, getting off out of the ocean now, and perhaps taking on some of the local wildlife. There's all sorts of local wildlife and bird life experiences that can be found through here as well. They are coupled into these great coastal journeys. In fact, speaking of great coastal journeys, you've got Explore Eyre and the Nullarbor Traveller. Now, this is a fabulous little tour opportunity for you where you can actually head out and do the coastline. You'll actually find yourself seeing humpback whales and going all the way across to Perth, so you can actually do a tour that takes in this whole ocean front, this great southern ocean. Going north, you'd head up into the Gawler Ranges, where you'll be met by a little wilderness welcome as you kind of get into the Kangaluna Camp. Now, the Kangaluna Camp is run by a guy called Jeff Scholes, and Scholesy I've known since I was working at tourism 30 years plus. And he runs what's called the Gawler Ranges Wilderness Safaris. He's created this little glamping experience. You've got these wonderful tents that are kind of raised floor inside. It's just delightful. Nice breezes kind of wafting through, and it's really about dining in style. It's about enjoying the bush in style. You're right on your doorstep. You'll head out and explore and check out the incredible flora. The flowers out here in season. This is the Sturt Desert Pea. It's very bright red Sturt Desert Pea, and you'll see carpets of colour as you wander through here. And during spring, you'll also see lots of bird life and lots of chicks. The emus of Gawler Ranges are in good number. As to the wildlife, and to get a chance to see a yellow-footed rock wallaby is truly a rare experience, something that Gawler Ranges safaris can definitely deliver. Now, heading up north from there, we head into the Flinders Ranges, and the Flinders Ranges are a 5-hour drive from Adelaide, and it puts you into some really fun outback areas where people are like, "G'day, mate, how you going?" They're really fun. The country folk are just really rich. Now, there's a bit of a story happening here. I just want to quickly explain. I would say that's last drinks for this gentleman here. I reckon what's happening is his wife has just called, and she's talking to the publican, saying, "Is Jack still there?" And the publican, doing the right thing, has said, "No, Jack's just left." Of course, Jack got probably half a beer there. When she gets on the phone, she's going to give Jack an earful. He's going to punch that beer down, and he'll be out of there like a rat up a drain pipe. You with me? Yeah, this is Australia, and this is, I got to tell you, when you come here for a feed, a good meal over a counter meal, which is a meal you have over the counter. You drop in the Prairie Hotel. You can try emu, kangaroo, you can try goat, you can try camel, or they'll give anything a go here, let me tell you. Now, the Flinders Ranges is a fabulous area, a true outback icon, and this here you're looking at Wilpena pound. That pound back in the early years of settlement, by a lot of the English that came through, there was a lot of bush rangers running afoul. And there was a bush ranger that used to steal cattle up in Queensland, and his name was Captain Lightfoot. And he'd bring the cattle down here, and he'd have it grazing, and he'd rebrand it inside the pound. And then he'd take it from there down to Kapunda, down to the markets, and he'd sell it. Lots of great stories when you're travelling too. You'll hear these stories. And if you've got an ear for stories, you can seriously gain a lot of information, like heading into the Arkaba station. This is actually a private conservancy, and on this private conservancy you've got some gorgeous accommodation at the actual Arkaba station lodging, as you see here, but you can go and do some bushwalks from here. You've got 60,000 acres of bush, natural bush, and the colours of the mountains and the bush and the wildlife and the bird life, incredible. The outback wildlife, your big red kangaroos and emus and lots of little lizards like your little thorny devil there, and some great birds, like the biggest bird of prey, one of the biggest birds of prey in the world is the wedge-tailed eagle. And so after a great day of hiking through the Salvation Jane, that's the name of that purple plant. They call it Salvation Jane or Patterson's Curse. So one's salvations, one's a curse. I don't know which one works. But it's through here that you'll all of a sudden turn a corner and your dining arrangements have been made. So after an arduous day of hiking, this lovely table like the Last Supper's laid out, a fabulous meal's prepared, and then you're off to bed in these basically it's called a swag. You're sleeping under the stars, and that's the morning. When you wake up in the morning, the first rays of the sun hitting those rocks, the rocks beam oranges and reds, the colours are intense. And speaking of intense, in 2019, Lake Eyre filled up with water. They had a lot of rain up there in the northern part. A big cyclone dropped up there into the Northern Territory, up into Queensland. They had a lot of rain that kind of came through, and this rain filters through and fills up this big lake. Now, it doesn't happen very often for the lake to be truly full. They also refer to Lake Eyre, it's actually referred to as Kati Thanda and Tahanda, rather. And this is, Kati Tahanda is basically this incredible salt pan, and it just fills up with water. And when it fills up with water, it fills up with wildlife. And the bird life comes in numbers beyond belief. That's budgerigars, little budgies, that green and yellow blur you're looking at. You've got cockies and galahs. You've got pelicans. I mean, it's just amazing, the bird life up through here. And you can fly through this area, drop down into William Creek, and you can actually taxi your plane right into the front bar. Right up to the front bar, you hop out of your plane, walk in and have a cleansing ale, the William Creek Hotel. This is Outback, my friends. This is what it's all about. I mean, the people of the Outback have a spirit, a real pioneer spirit. You can feel it when you're there. And when you go to a land at a place like Cooper Pedy, you're looking down over these pock marks and these holes in the ground, and there's actually holes made by miners who are digging for opal. Yeah, 80% of the world's opal's coming from South Australia. And so come in here and go and stay, as the miners do, they live underground. So you can live underground yourself. You can stay at the Desert Cave Hotel, run by a mate of mine, Bob Corro. This Corro's got this great little setup. In fact, when you first arrive there, it's kind of fun because you arrive at the airport, and there's Bob Corro at the desk welcoming you. Then you get your transfer. It's Bob Corro transferring you to your hotel. Then you step inside, and he's popped up behind the reception area. There's Bob Corro at the reception area. Then you think, I'll just drop down to the pub and go and get a beer. There's Bob Corro. He runs the whole thing. He's the mayor of the town. And so you're in good hands. Bob Corro, the Desert Cave has got the only true hard rock cafe in the world. Yeah, you like that? Now, getting around South Australia, there are some great rail journeys that will link in other parts of Australia. For example, you can go from Adelaide all the way north up through the top end all the way to Darwin. That's called the Garn. Or you can head east to west. You can go from Sydney to Perth, and of course Adelaide's a nice little stop off in between. So you can use that rail journey to connect you to other states as well. The Garn was actually named after Afghan cameleers that were brought in by early settlers to help open up the outback. And now these camels are running around wild in the outback. We're selling them back to the Arabs, those camels. We'll be selling them sand next, don't you worry. We've got a plan. The nice thing about rail, though, is you meet people. I mean, even the Indian Pacific. You board the Indian Pacific in Sydney, you'll probably find 80% of the people on board are Aussies. When you come into Adelaide, you've made some fast friends, and all of a sudden you've got friends to go out with for dinner. I mean, this couple just met on the train. No, they didn't really. I'm only joking. Of course they're travelling together. But you find the whole rail experience is a fun journey to pull together. Another fun journey is to get on the Murray River, which is the longest river in Australia. Actually starts up in New South Wales and Victoria, and it filters its way through into South Australia, where it's quite broad and quite wide, and it's here that you can do a Murray River trails, a real river safari on board a luxury houseboat. Now, these houseboats are well appointed. Once you've checked in here, you'll have the beautiful common areas where you'll dine with your group and your friends and so on. And the dining experience is exquisite. I mean, we're talking great food. The wine and the fare is coming from the regions you're passing through. So it's all locally acquired product. And you can get off this vessel, of course, and go hiking, see all sorts of wildlife, and take in this incredible river itself, and do some bird watching, and maybe spot one or two of these little guys. That's the tawny frogmouth owl. Look at that. They look like a caricature, don't they? These little tawny frogmouth owls. Kind of fun. And you can do some kayaking, canoeing. I mean, this is truly an essential river safari. And to really get a feel for what it's all about, I highly recommend this journey. Then going to the southeast, going south of Adelaide, down to the southeast, you can stop in little towns like Robe. Robe's well known for its crayfish. Crayfish like your lobster, but without the big pinches. And these crayfish are just fantastic. My dad was a teacher down in Mount Gambier, and we used to have on Stanky Brothers, and they would take us out catching crayfish. I got to tell you, I've never had seafood that tastes anything near as good as what's down here. And speaking of good, the wine in this region is pretty damn good too. Like in the Coonawarra, they have this belt of actual Terra Rosa soil. Now this cross section is actually a good picture because it shows you, look how rich and red that soil is, and see how it's sitting on this area of white. That's actually limestone. So it makes it quite porous, which means they don't get a lot of flooding. The roots are quite healthy. They don't get any funguses, and so it's really, really good soil for growing great. It happens to be the best soil for growing great Cabernet Sauvignon. In fact, that award I mentioned earlier about the Jimmy Watson Trophy, there's been more wines that have come from the Coonawarra to have won the Jimmy Watson Trophy, or at least the grape juice has been brought out. Maybe another winery has actually kind of bought some grape juice from here, but this is where some of the best Jimmy Watson product comes from, that's for sure. And then here's old Mount Gambier, where as a kid I grew up. I lived on the right-hand side, just over the lip of the volcano. And I was a typical boy. I used to hike up through here, and I used to go camping and fishing down in the Valley Lake, and that's the Blue Lake here. You can see it's actually a volcano, and these volcanoes now, both the craters have kind of collapsed inside, and there's artesian water. So that same belt of limestone that you saw up in the Naracoorte region up is right through here as well. So artesian water kind of filters through here and pops up, creating these beautiful lakes. Just fabulous. So this, of course, Mount Gambier would be something you would do if you're doing like the Great Ocean Road and you're going to head across into Victoria, across to Melbourne, or perhaps you're coming the other way. Perhaps you're leaving Melbourne, you're going through the Great Ocean Road, you drop into the mount and then make your way up to Adelaide. Right now, I'm going to open up to questions. If you've got any questions for me, I'm going to just ask you to type them into the question box on the right-hand side. Okay, so I've got a question here about the seasons and temperatures. Very good question. Thank you, Stephen. The seasons, we do get summer, winter, autumn, and spring in Adelaide. Our summer is exactly opposite your winter. Okay? Our summer, your winter is our summer, and your summer is our winter, and vice versa, if you understand what I'm saying. So, and summers in Adelaide, the average median temperature is going to be like in the 80s. That's the average median temperature. You can get occasional days where it hit the 100 mark too, don't you worry. But the average median temperature is in the 80s. In winter, the average median temperature is more like the 50s. So it's not going to be a harsh winter. But it's a little cooler. And when I think of harsh winters, I think of the northern part of North America. You can get quite snowbound and ice and sleet and whatever. You're not going to see that in Adelaide and South Australia. The spring and fall are quite delightful. The spring period will be probably from like August, October, November, spring. In fact, the further north you go, the spring can actually start earlier because the outback tends to spring starts to, they leave winter a little quicker and summer starts to pick up, and so spring kind of happens early. That's when you get carpets of flower and carpets of colour. So people ask me, what's the best time to go to South Australia? And I'm going to say, I'd be happy going any time. Right now, I'd just be happy to go. That's another story, though. But no, seriously, with regards to weather, every winter offers us a different experience. To go along the coastline, along the great ocean, great southern bight of Australia, up there from Lincoln up through to Coffin Bay and across to the Nullarbor Plains, and to see these big storms coming in, the green black clouds, the water spraying, and it's just phenomenal. I just love the drama of a great ocean, and the same, and going to to a wine region like the Barossa, for example, in winter. You go inside the little wineries, and they've got the pot-belly stove happening, got the little open fire going. They're burning eucalypt. When they burn gum trees, we call eucalypt gum. When you burn gum, it's got a great scent to it. Or maybe they're burning mallee root. And Australians will know what mallee root's all about. It burns at a really high heat, but the smell is just delightful. So you're in there, you've got a big brandy balloon full of muscat, and you're sniffing that, you're chatting, you're talking to winemakers, you've got a bit of a glow on your face. You're not driving, somebody else is driving, you're enjoying yourself, you're having fun. And it's just conversations, there's not as many people travelling, you get a chance to meet the winemaker. So every time of the year has got its benefits. And so I'd highly recommend, depending on when you're travelling, because that can couple in nicely with perhaps going up into the tropics where it won't be as tropical in the middle of winter, and therefore you won't be as sweaty and sticky. So we can work through on that. You talk to your travel advisor, and we'll work through you on that. With regards to the Murray River safaris, well, you can do those safaris like a 4-night, 5-night. We can customise those depending on if you've got a little group. If you want to organise, they are just an amazing way to see. So another question's here about how long should you spend in South Australia? Well, if you liked what I talked about and you wanted to kind of do a little bit of everything, you're going to need at least 2 weeks. So it doesn't take long, does it? See, South Australia is a destination in its own right. I know growing up there, my vacations, I'd spend 2 weeks on the Murray River. Serious. 2 weeks on the Murray, fishing and just water skiing and houseboating and just relaxing and getting my life back. That's what we want now, isn't it? Don't we want our lives back? Do we want to travel and find ourselves in and out of airports? Do we want to be bashed around by too many people? I think we want to escape to a state like South Australia where the population number is such that's manageable, where people care, where people really care, and to go somewhere where you can really immerse yourself. And you'll come away, you'll get your life back. That's what I can say about South Australia. South Australia provides a life back promise. What's the best way to fly into South Australia from the mid-USA? Well, you're going to find yourself we're looking forward, of course, and so when air comes back, and you're going to find that with companies like Qantas from the Midwest, Qantas had a direct flight out of Chicago that I'm suggesting will come back from Chicago through to Brisbane, and you can go from Brisbane to Adelaide. If you're flying with Air New Zealand also has a flight out of Chicago, and you can go from Chicago to Auckland and Auckland into Adelaide. So there's two ways. The good thing about going to Air New Zealand is it's international all the way. So when you go internationally into Auckland, you don't have to change into a domestic airport. You can just stay in the international terminus, change planes, and fly from there straight into Adelaide. That's the thought. So that's how we'd work it. That's for sure. And yes, another question here about can you couple it with other states? It all comes down to what's important to you. Now, what you want to be doing is you want to be writing out a little checklist to put together a list of all the things you want to see and do. Now, some of the things I might have mentioned that you thought, well, that sounds nice. Well, write it down. When you get that travel planner, get some sticky notes and put sticky notes on the various pages, and then talk to your travel advisor. Your travel advisor is key here to helping you get it all organised. They'll talk to me, and we'll work it out together. We work as a team. I'm an extension of your travel advisor, and by working together, we'll customise an itinerary that will knock your socks off, I can promise you. What makes one... very good. Somebody picked that up. Debbie, very good. Somebody's asked the question, what makes one lake blue and one lake green in Mount Gambier? Well, I'd say it's got a bit to do with depth. Two things, actually. A bit to do with depth. The Blue Lake is very deep. In fact, no, you need a pretty good tank of oxygen to kind of find the bottom of it. It does have a bottom, must do, because but it is very, very deep. And with that, the water that's circulating, because this artesian water is flowing underneath, and it's going out. It actually goes out to the sea, would you believe it? So the actual artesian water is kind of flowing underneath there, and so it keeps that blue. And in certain times of the year, that colour blue is so blue that when you fill up your bathtub, because that's where all of our water comes from in Mount Gambier, it comes from the Blue Lake. And when you fill up your bathtub, it looks like you've got a blue dye in there. That's how blue it is. It's nuts. And that's pretty much, I think, from like October, November around to January, I think that's when it happens. Then the Green Lake, well, it's not the Green Lake, it's called the Valley Lake, not the Green Lake, but the Valley Lake is not as deep. It's still artesian fed, but it's also quite an active lake. So it's a lot of ducks and a lot of people boating, and so there's lots of reeds and algae, and so to get that little green colour comes from lots of use. So it's not just purely a water source, it's also a source of other activities for bird life and so on. So that's the reason for the colour. Well picked up. Somebody's thinking. What other? Good. I think we've pretty well covered most of it here. You guys have been great. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I want to just wrap up and just say a couple of things as I kind of tidy things up. I mean, South Australia is a destination in its own right. Of course, we can couple that with other states, and you can. I mean, at least if you're just doing South Australia, perhaps you're wanting to do food and wine and wildlife and maybe outback, you're going to need at least a minimum of 5 or 6 nights. But I myself, if I was going to do it properly, I'd go for a couple of weeks. It really comes back to you. But don't be too worried about all that. We can work out. You just talk to your travel advisor. We can work out how to factor in wildlife, wilderness and wine to give you a truly wondrous down under vacation experience. And I've got to say, for those that are planning, that travel planner will be a big plus to you. Now, we can email that to you. So we're going to kind of follow up with your travel advisors today. We're going to send them a link to this travel planner. They can send it out to you. And also with regards to the maps and the dictionaries, if you'd like them, talk to your travel advisor. They're going to order some for you, so they'll have them sent to them, and then they'll either send them to you or you can go and pick them up, whatever works best. But these are kind of key. It's like a little kit, a little Australia travel kit to help you get planning ready. And if you're planning in 2021, I think you should be planning to go to Australia, because let me tell you, we're excited about opening up, and we so desperately want you to come and travel and see us. So I hope. And guys, I want to thank you very much once again. I hope you've enjoyed coming to my home state of South Australia. I've certainly enjoyed escaping there for a brief moment, living vicariously through this little journey. I wish you all the very best. And remember, the fun is in the planning. So call a travel advisor and let the fun begin. Here's cheers and bye for now.